Here we are for episode 13 of I Know What You Watched
Speaking number
last
13.
week. 13 es mi número favorito.
13, is that what it is?
So let's put in one of those roll-out party whistles in.
Woohoo!
No, actual insert one.
Yeah, I know.
There it is. So I've got to say, before I came on, I had to look up what those whistles were called, because otherwise it'd just be called party whistle, and there's a whole assortment of party whistles. So I typed into the search engine, roll out party whistle, and it turns out they're called party blowouts. But the first thing that came up was blowing whistles.
You're so silly. I was going to say, I'm pretty sure it's like just a party blow whistle
And
or
then
something. That's what I
blowing
would've thought.
whistle horn.
God. See, this is what I mean. Men don't grow up. You still have the same humour of...
So you learn something
Your
new every
childhood.
day. You learn something new every day. And today I've been given knowledge.
useless knowledge.
Yeah.
So should we get on with the actual topics?
Let's just let you say what we watched first, rather than
Yeah.
putting it straight into order.
Yeah. So we actually watched 3 quite well-known ones for a change.
As in, we've been watching like real,
Obscure.
let's call them B-grade movie, yeah, kind of stuff that hasn't had cinema release and things like this.
We've been watching more obscure ones. So these ones I feel like everyone in the horror world will at least have heard of, if not seen. But it was a first time watch for me for all 3 of them, which is why we've included them. So we had Prom Night.
The original.
The original, yeah. We also watched Thanksgiving, the recent release.
Eli Roth's.
And we finally watched Slither.
Well, I'd seen Slither, but yeah.
I
Yeah.
hadn't.
James Gunn's Slither.
Yeah.
The guy that is now doing big superhero movies. And on that, before we get into what your rankings are, talking of Slither, and it's written and directed by James Gunn, and you found out recently that James Gunn also
wrote the live-action Scooby-Doo movie,
which
I love.
Scooby-Doo in general.
Yeah,
you're a
Scooby-Doo in
huge fan
general.
of.
Yeah.
And
But I think the first movie does it justice. It's a shame to hear that the cast all had such a horrible time on it. But I still love the movie.
you know what? Matthew Lillard's performance in that
Brilliant.
as Shaggy is just the pinnacle, the zenith.
It's so good.
He should have won. If the Oscars were just about pure acting and transformation, Matthew Lillard is the best performance of that year by far. So, what was your order?
I'm going to make a confession.
1 second. Linda Cardellini.
Cardellini.
Played Velma.
Linda
Yes.
Cardellini. Yeah, great. My confession is that my recollections aren't the best with this, so I'm kind of going to have to rely on, John, you and your notes.
See, I take it seriously.
Very seriously. Yeah. I take it more from just the casual viewer's perspective.
I just want to make sure I get everything in there.
My rankings might change by the end of this discussion, but for the sake of it, I will just have a stab at it. I'm going to put... Oh god, okay.
It feels like, have you given this any thought?
Yeah, it's so hard because I don't remember enough of them, but I think Thanksgiving last, Prom Night, and then Slither.
I'm going Thanksgiving in third, Slither in second, and Prom Night takes the top spot for me.
Interesting, okay. Well, at least we've got the third place, which we always start with anyway.
Yeah.
Agreed. So should we go right into that one?
Yeah, Thanksgiving.
And this is actually the one that I remember the least about. And I think probably the reason why was, one thing I do remember was that I didn't really connect with any of the main young character.
I mean, the obnoxious teen cast.
Yeah, but even the ones who weren't supposed to be obnoxious, there wasn't a charisma there that made me personally feel like invested in that, and I think that's why the whole film was less important, and so it didn't stick in my mind as much. But I did quite enjoy Patrick Dempsey. Still.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Do you recall what you'll know Patrick Dempsey most from?
Probably some like chick flick rom-com.
It is, and I don't remember what it's called, but it's the bit where there's a bit in the movie where towards the end he's in Scotland or something, and he tries to get a boat across the river, and they say to him, "Oh, it will take too long to get to the venue." So instead they give him a horse,
Yeah.
and apparently it's quicker to go by horse to this place than what it is. And then he gets to the wedding at the end, and the what's the name? The bride turns out leaving her groom for Patrick Dempsey in the church, and then Patrick Dempsey gets punched in the face, but everyone instantly makes up pretty much.
I feel like that's one of those like straight to TV.
It's
things
not.
though,
It would
like
have been
Love in Scotland or something.
It would have been multi-million-dollar.
God, that really sucked.
But what I know him from, he's very famous as like a TV doctor in Grey's Anatomy.
Right.
You know, McDreamy.
Oh, is that
Yeah,
him?
we know that quote from Two and a Half Men. But what I know him best from is Scream 3, where he plays Detective Kincaid.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's really, really good in that.
That makes sense because.
So it's really nice to see him in horror again. Because that movie was 1999, Scream 3/2000. So yeah, he was really good in this.
Well, I've certainly seen that more often than I've seen the Scotland one, so I don't know why you said I know him best from some terrible
Because this was
romance.
the first time you've seen Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And we've seen Scream 3, obviously.
Yeah.
But if I said to you, is Patrick Dempsey in Scream 3, you wouldn't be 100% sure, would you?
I'm never 100% sure.
But you would know that he was riding that horse all the way to the church, though, when I brought that up. You know exactly what I was talking about. So there we go.
Well, that's an unforgettable moment. But yeah, no, this role suited him much better. To be fair, though, I wasn't really paying attention to his acting in the Scotland one because the whole scenario was just so unbelievably mind-blowing.
I know it's clearly a
yes,
harsh
I'll
point for you, that
leave
one.
leave it alone. But yeah, as I said, I don't remember that much more apart from not really feeling invested in the main teens. So, what about you?
As well as Patrick Dempsey in terms of very well-known actors.
Oh,
We
yeah.
also have the amazing, the beautiful, the iconic Gina Gershon.
Oh, that's where you were going, yeah.
Yeah, and she's not in it for too long. But just seeing Gina Gershon was enough. If Eli Roth wasn't enough for me to watch this movie, then that just added something extra special.
Yeah.
So this movie opens up, essentially, so it's Thanksgiving, obviously, and there's a massive crowd of people on like a Black Friday event for shopping, and they're being kept back by the barriers, and so as you kind of mentioned, all the characters are already at this point quite obnoxious.
Yeah.
We have no sympathy for them, and then the security guards who are holding back the hordes, including these teens, are also not likable people, very much. So anyway, they're holding back the hordes, and the reason there are hordes for this Black Friday event is because you'll get, if I remember correctly, a free waffle iron for the first 100 customers, and obviously there's something like 2,500 people outside, or it looks something like that. So it just reminded me of my real life, where I used to work in retail.
Oh, yeah.
And I used to have things like Black Friday events, and people would act
Feral.
Yeah, just feral beings coming in to get the equivalent of a free waffle iron, which no one needs, no one really wants.
And
it's
I still
not
don't
special,
feel like we get the
but because
same
it's free,
amount of it in the UK as in the US. I mean, yeah.
Unfortunately, it creeps in over here, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course it does. I do remember all of that, and and the way it's done is a bit over the top. But then, to be fair, when you look at some videos and stuff from these events,
I thought it was a great comment because obviously, as you can imagine, if you haven't seen it, the hordes of people break through the barriers and they crash through the storefront, and I guess what are supposed to be our protagonists are already in the building, along with Gina Gershon and Patrick Dempsey, and the hordes rush this shop, and Gina Gershon gets stampeded, gets stampled.
It's a new word.
There's a stampede, and she is stampled to death.
Yeah. Essentially, they end up looting almost because they break in.
And
in there,
while all this is happening, one of our main characters is filming it on his phone.
Yeah.
And he's kind of enjoying filming it as well. He's saying, "Oh, this is wild," things like this, and da da da.
Yeah, he wants to get like the social media.
He
fame.
wants to go viral or whatever. Yeah. So this event happens, people die, and we fast forward some time, a little bit of time, if I remember correctly. Whatever, it doesn't really matter. And then we go into this town, it's like in Massachusetts, I believe, somewhere, because that's why it's Thanksgiving.
I think it's just the next year, the next Thanksgiving.
Yeah, most likely. And the mayor of this town, he has his axe robbed one day in some building, some historic building, and yeah, the killer. Actually, I shouldn't go into this yet. I should let you just tell me what you remember from the movie.
Not that.
Oh, and also there's a main character, I think his name was Bobby, who's a promising baseball player, and he has his like pitching arm broken during the stampede as well, and all of a sudden he's disappeared. He's been gone for the whole year, and then when we fast forward to next year, he's back in town while these killings start to take place. You really don't remember anything, do you? You just
No, I do. Yeah. I thought I was going to take over, and then you keep talking, but...
You have the floor.
I didn't remember the axe bit. I do remember, though, there's a character we haven't even mentioned who is quite important in it, which is the owner of the store that had the sale, and he's the father of, I'd say, the lead girl, right?
Yeah, he's been in... He was in Hostel, or Hostel 2.
Yeah, we've seen him in a few things.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is Eli Roth has used him before, and he's also the guy. He's in Suits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's really good at what he does.
Yeah, he is.
Really good. Very funny as well in the right way. So he is being...
The actor's name is Rick Hoffman.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So he's being told by like his daughter and stuff to not have another sale for the safety of and like for respect and
after
stuff,
the tragedy
right?
of the stampede.
Exactly, because people died. Was it not his wife? Was Gina Gershon his wife, or who was? Because she was.
I don't know if Gina Gershon was the mayor's wife. All I know is that what happens later in terms of
Wait,
what
the mayor
her
or the
relationship
owner of the store? I'm pretty sure it's the owner of the store.
Yeah, which I've called the mayor, I believe.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
Okay, I was thinking that was like
guy.
a mayor.
Okay, yeah, he is the owner of the store. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
/ mayor.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure you get plenty of political power.
He's a big shot in
the
the town,
store.
isn't he?
Yeah,
He's a big shot in the town. Yeah.
Yeah, and then yes, you jogged my memory about the baseball guy because they obviously paint him as a potentially
He's
bad
a red
guy.
herring, isn't he?
Well, yeah, because this thing destroyed his career, the event, the tragedy, and I think also there's a major part what you were saying with the guy who's part of the group who filmed everything and was enjoying it, wanted to go viral, and we're shown, I think right at the beginning, we're shown the clip that he puts together of all of his footage, and he's obviously shared it on social media, and that's kind of again a theme through it, is this like live streaming / viral / social media in general, and going viral for weird things, I guess.
When we first watched this, so this is the only movie on the list which I hadn't seen until we both watched it, and huge fan of Eli Roth.
Yeah.
Like massive. Cabin Fever.
Cabin Fever, I love.
For me, that's his best film. He hasn't bettered it. There are other great ones. I love Knock Knock with Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
That's such a fun movie. I love both the Hostel movies. So when I sat down to watch this, I was thinking, I really hope that I enjoyed this because I really love this guy's stuff. And it wasn't my favourite of his. And so then I went to sleep that night, but the thing is, when I got the next day and I started thinking about Thanksgiving again, I actually started, in my head started to turn. I was like, actually, I really enjoyed this actually, and then this and this and this, and then I watched it a second time, and yeah, it confirmed that there was a lot of stuff in this that I really, really enjoyed, whereas on first viewing, I wasn't too sure. The things that I really love this, because you can't, like you say, you can't relate to any of the characters really. There's another cast, I just want them all to die essentially. And for the most part that does happen. So on the viral video, the guy, the killer, he has this lair, and he has like newspaper clippings of the event, and he's also sending all of the group of teens who have participated in the stampede. He's sending them like photos on on a photo app to their phones with a Thanksgiving table with their names at places around the table, and as he offs people, he puts like their severed head at the table and then sends them a message and all this. And his plan is to get these certain amount of people, so like the owner of the store,
all the ones
and
who
team,
he believes are responsible for the tragedy.
Absolutely,
basically.
yeah. And I love the shots in his lair. And when I mentioned that the killer steals his axe from this historical building, there's a shot that comes, I think, after it, where they're in the lair and the killer is sharpening his axe. It's just a very short shot, probably like 4 or 5 seconds, but just the lighting, the sound, the sparks and everything like this, it just looked really, really cool.
And you've also just reminded me there is one like pretty grim kill.
I was literally about to go
Or
into
you
the list
about
of
to go
kills.
into that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So on the viral video, there's what turns out to be an obnoxious waitress in real life in her day job, and she's one of the she might even be the first
instigators
person.
of the riot, essentially.
Yeah, and she might be one of the first people to get killed. And what happens is the killer starts to attack her, like swing at her with his axe, in the back rooms of the cafe, and he ends up taking her head, pulling it into a water bath, and then he opens the door of a huge freezer, sticks her head on the freezer so that her wet head sticks to it, and then and he goes to get his axe to go and kill her, and at that time she's like pulling her face away from the freezer, and it's all coming off her face and stuff.
Yeah, just pulls like her entire cheek off.
She manages to make it outside into the car park. The killer gets into a car, starts chasing her down, and she gets slammed into a dumpster and split in half.
Yeah.
So that's one of the first kills that we see. There's also the security guard that I mentioned, who's like a comic relief guy, who we see protecting the barrier and the hordes of people. And he gets an electric turkey carver to the stomach and then beheaded by like almost like cheese wire or something like this. There's a lot of actual Thanksgiving nod killings. So another person gets a girl gets like 2 corn on the cob holders with sharp sticks at the end of them. She gets them put in her ears and then she has to pull them out and stuff. It's like really goofy kind of stuff, but it was pretty cool. There's also a gym coach in the movie, pretty short scene, and he's from Boston. He's got a heavy Boston accent, and he's walking through the gym in like his vest, holding his clipboard, telling all of the team to get one more rep and all this typical stuff. And out from the back of the gym, this cheerleader appears and takes his attention away and takes him on a detour out of the gym, and she takes him to the bleachers, like the basketball court, where there's a trampoline set up. And she gets on the trampoline, he sits down, and she starts jumping up and down in her cheerleader outfit, takes down her knickers, and then as the gym coach is, like, his eyes are starting to bug out of his head, all of a sudden the killer comes out of nowhere, twists his head around, and he's just like slumped at the bleachers while she's still jumping up and down on the trampoline. In the meantime, the killer then positions himself underneath the trampoline and just puts his knife through it, and she starts jumping up and down on the knife and stuff like this, and is bounced up and down on it. That was an ingenious kill, which I should mention is, I believe that is the trailer in the double feature of Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez, these 2 movies, Death Proof and Planet Terror, which was shown as a double feature, like an old school, like I guess 70s drive-in style. And in the intermission of these movies, so when one ends, you get these adverts for these fake movies. So I think one of them is called Werewolf Men of the SS, which is directed by Rob Zombie. There's another one called Hobo with a Shotgun, which actually got made. And now Thanksgiving was also one of those, and I think they had the trampoline scene. So that is what the whole thing is based off. I believe it's only actually Wolfmen of the SS now is the only trailer in that movie of the fake movie that hasn't been made into a real movie. So I wonder if we'll get to see that.
I think I'll pass.
What? How can you pass on Rob Zombie's Werewolf Men of the SS?
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I went through. So I went through the girl who gets the corn holders in her ear.
Yeah, you did.
And as she's struggling before she dies, she thinks she's gonna make it, but then she gets thrown onto a saw blade, and she gets like taken apart. And then as she comes off the saw blade, all of her guts are hanging out and stuff. And yeah, top notch gore kills and stuff like this.
Well, the one that got to me the most actually wasn't even any of the ones you've mentioned, although they were all great. The one that I felt most uncomfortable was the one where someone's put in a massive oven and cooked alive.
Yeah, that's the store owner's new fiance.
And then she's carved on the table and you actually see it and it looks like...
It looks weird, doesn't it?
Meat, and
it
served
looked like just
to the guests.
bizarre turkey meat. And they went through the whole detail of basting her and seasoning her before the killer put her into the oven.
Yeah, that was just grim.
Yeah.
I think that would be the bottom of my list of the choices of all those kills, how I'd want to go.
when they get him at the table and they started carving up the store owner's new fiance. Also, the guy who recorded the viral video out of the teen gang, Evan, he's the whole gang, and especially Evan, are being lectured by the killer about how, no one appreciates subtlety these days, and if you want to go viral, you have to hit people over the head. And he literally puts Evan's head at the table, takes this giant, it's not quite a hammer, but very blunt object, and just caves his head in while live streaming it to an audience, which is again another
stab at society, isn't it?
Another stab at society, absolutely, yeah. So I like the way that they did that, and they kept it running through the movie as well. And I really liked that quote about, subtlety really doesn't work anymore to quite a degree on a lot of things, and that's a shame.
Yeah, it has to sort of be an instant attention grabber now, doesn't it? Because you can there's so much there. You scroll through, and if it's not straight away hitting you, then...
So obviously this is an Eli Roth movie, so there is some goofy humour as well. So one of my favourite things about Cabin Fever is the deputy guy who's like, "Hey man, just party. Everybody just go back inside, calm down, and just party." That guy's amazing. And in Thanksgiving, there's just a very short scene where we've cut from probably a kill, and we go into the classroom, and it's one of the students coming towards the end of his Thanksgiving speech, and he's in a bit of a emotional state, and all he says is, "That's why I won't be celebrating Thanksgiving this year or any year." And he lifts up his shirt and starts wiping his tears away.
And of course he's got perfect abs,
and there's two girls beside him.
Like...
and the teacher's like, "Thanks, Chad." That really made me laugh.
Yeah, no, there were plenty of comedic moments, and I think that's why, because you and I have always said that we hate sort of movies that shoehorn political things in or do things for purely out of a moral basis or whatever. But when it's done like this with humour and it's making fun a bit of society, it's satirical, and that I like.
In the movie as well, there's a character who turns up on the school campus and he's selling guns to the kids, essentially. Remember the guy?
Yeah.
And
random.
Yeah, I can't remember what his relation is to. I don't know if he's a previous attendee of this school or something like that. But anyway, he's organising a party mid this movie, and at some point, one of the characters mentions to the other one, "Oh, by the way, Gun Guy's party this year is charging to get in, $1 or something like that." And then we cut later on to this party, and the gun guy's sitting outside on the porch, and these 4 school kids approach, and he stands up, the gun guy stands up to get his $1 from all of them or whatever, but before they hand it over, they're like, "Man, this party's normally free. Is it really that good? Is the party banging kind of stuff?" And then he's like, "Look kids, you want in or not pretty much?" And he said, "Yeah, but we just need to know if it's going to be better than last year." And then the gun guy goes on a rant, and he's like, "You think something is over and it will never be great again. But look at Black Sabbath. Ozzy was gone, but along comes Ronnie James Dio. Oh, 5'0" of him. And rock history was made." and he's starts nodding it, but then the 4 kids are like, "Who's Black Sabbath?" And then the gun guy gets so mad, he throws something at them, and the kid's like, "No, wait, I just want to know, what's Black Sabbath?"
And he doesn't let them in the party. He's like, "I won't even take your money, get out of here."
And being a huge rock and metal fan in general anyway, so I completely got what it was about. Because it's pretty niche, but the way that he did it and the way that the kid just "No, wait, I just want to know that," because it sounds so cool. Who's 5'0", Ronnie James Dio and stuff. And yeah, another great tiny little scene. Performance was spot on for it.
Yeah.
The dialogue was spot on, and the reaction was spot on as well.
Mhm.
So a lot of stuff that I really loved in this.
And it's our number 3, so you know. At least this week we had 3 good offerings, and that's what was hard. Whereas usually we have 3 not so good offerings.
It's normally kind of assumed that we're gonna watch something really off the wall, silly.
Terrible.
So it's supposed to be silly almost.
But
yeah, as I said, so not thinking that I didn't love it as much. There's also, I just want to say, there's a parade in the movie with floats, a Thanksgiving parade, and this is after all the teens have already been attacked a whole bunch of times and people are dead, so like 2/3 away from the movie. And when they're on their float, they're looking out into the crowd, and they keep seeing people dressed as the killer, and puts them unease and stuff.
Dressed as a pagan.
Yeah, and this is straight taken out of I Know What You Did Last Summer, because Sarah Michelle Gellar is the prom queen in her town, and she's at the parade, and everywhere she looks, there's people in the fisherman's slicker. So just completely, it was like literally ripped from I Know What You Did Last Summer. That was pretty apparent, but. And although I enjoy a good float scene in a horror movie, to keep them coming.
A good float scene.
Yeah, I think we've pretty much run through it. There was another kill bit where the killer is running through the school, and he comes into a room with all these mannequin heads, and the girl's hiding in between all the mannequin heads while he's trying to find her, and she makes a noise obviously, and then he starts axing away at the mannequin heads, and just that whole sequence. From the chase through the school into the mannequin head makeup department room remind me of a combination of Scream and Scream 2, where Ghostface is chasing Courtney Cox through these corridors and she ends up in this soundproof room.
Yeah.
And in Scream 3, Jenny McCarthy goes to the director's office and she ends up in the room with all the Scream, all the Ghostface costumes, and she's hiding in it. So it's another thing which I thought was possibly a reference to previous movies.
Yeah, I mean, it was well shot, well directed. I think really for me, like I said, from the very beginning, the letdown was some of the cast just didn't do it for me.
I just didn't know what to expect, but now that we know it's Thanksgiving 2, I'll definitely be excited to watch that movie. Yeah. And like I said, on second watch of Thanksgiving, I enjoyed it more, so I think possibly on the third watch, I want to watch it again
I'll enjoy it at some point.
Possibly even more, so I'll get all the jokes more and stuff like this. Yeah, love Eli Roth. So let's get in to number 2 pick.
Yeah, so we'll go with the Slither, the number 2.
My number 2 pick, yes.
Mm-hmm.
We already mentioned that it's written and directed by James Gunn. And yeah, this movie opens with, it's kind of like a cheesy outer space shot of a comet hurtling through space towards Earth. Mm-hmm. And there are 2 cops on a stakeout in their cop car. One of them is Nathan Fillion. And this comet crashes to Earth, and the first time we see this comet thing, we're going through the woods and we just close in on the giant rock, and the camera work of that is taken straight out of Evil Dead. So I was just gonna let it in there early that there are loads of references that you can start talking about something and say, oh, this is from this is from that. So this is a movie that wears its influences on its sleeve in a big way, and I always enjoy when people do that in the right way, because there are kind of nods to as well with the comet, Critters, Alien with the egg and something shooting out of it, The Thing with the effects, and a couple of others which we'll probably mention later on. It also has a really cool cast. You've got Elizabeth Banks, who plays the lead female role, Michael Rooker, who is pretty much, if there's one reason to watch this movie, it's Michael Rooker. And yeah, as I mentioned, Nathan Fillion as well. So really cool cast. And also I forget her name, but she was in The American Office.
Okay.
Yeah, and in The American Office she goes out with the guy John Krasinski. Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, so apparently when she was cast in Slither, The Office was just about to blow up, but she was kind of unknown. So because The Office started to get big just before Slither came out, they decided to send her out on all the press tours and things like this, whereas before she wouldn't have even been considered.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you like about this movie?
Well, I'm always a sucker for a comedy if it's done well. And it did have some very funny moments.
Yeah, there's some real nice dialogue in this.
Absolutely, some good character work. And I also enjoyed some of the weirdness that you get to see happening to the people who get drawn into this alien being, and it's like a sort of society Suspiria type feel in a horror comedy
in a small town.
That's
When I said Michael Rooker is one of the big reasons to watch this, as well as just him being a really good actor, it's how he's made up. He's in obviously the massive makeup effects, and these effects.
So he's the one who gets taken over by an alien. Essentially,
he's the big daddy of the alien
haven't
world.
Seen it.
Yeah. And these creature effects are done by, I believe, Master FX, Todd Masters, and Dan Rebert. And I know that Dan Rebert has worked on like Terminator 2, Judgment Day in the art department, so some like really big heavyweight titles. And yeah, the way that they do the makeup effects in this, and the way that Michael Rooker's character is shot when he's essentially the alien. It's like the Thing, actually. That's a big nod to the Thing, the way that he is.
So again, we haven't really said much about the story past something falling to Earth, but he's the initial...
There's a lot to get into with this movie.
He's the initial one to get, let's say, taken over or infected or however it is by this alien being, and so his physical body starts to morph throughout the film, and that's what you're kind of talking about. Michael
Rooker is in a marriage of convenience with Elizabeth Banks's character, from Elizabeth Banks's end, by the way, because she's much younger than him. And kind of the movie begins with Michael Rooker going to bed. Elizabeth Banks is already in bed, and he tries to get lucky, and he gets turned down, and he gets kind of mad about it. So he leaves the bedroom, and he goes out to the bar, looking for some easy prey. And this character called Brenda comes out and starts talking to him. And so Michael Rooker and Brenda, Michael Rooker's character, by the way, is called Grant. They go out, Grant takes Brenda out to the woods, and they start kind of like making out and stuff. But then Michael Rooker stops it. He's like, "Oh no, I'm married." Then he spots the egg in the distance and walks towards it, and this little, really thin, sharp worm thing kind of sticks out of it, and then shoots itself into Michael Rooker's stomach and burrows its way
and
into
already
his stomach.
From that moment, the alien being thing that we see is disgusting, slimy, squidgy.
Yeah, I believe that's probably Dan Rebert's work, because I was looking at his reel and stuff, just mind-blowing kind of stuff. So after this thing shoots into Michael Rooker, he goes home and he's craving meat. So he opens his fridge and he's like, "Meat."
Yes.
And it's just a fridge.
Takes like 5 steaks out.
A fridge full of steaks.
Raw.
And then the next morning, Elizabeth Banks, who's her character is called Skylar, after turning Grant down the night before, she decides that she's going to make it up to him. And they're about to get busy on the couch, and when he opens his shirt, she notices the wound on him, and he just says, "Oh, it's nothing pretty much, and I've spoken to Dr. Cole about it, and it's going to clear itself up," or whatever. And then after this, the next morning, we see Grant, after devouring all the steaks in his fridge, he's gone to the butcher's, and the butcher's like, "Hey, Mr. Grant, what can I do you for?" And he's like, "Give me a couple of ribeyes." And the butcher's like, "How many?" He goes, 8. 10.
Yeah.
Make it 14. And then the next shot is just him with like a lorry load of meat stacked up in the back of his truck. So by this time, he's bought all this meat, and he's locked up the basement in his own house, and he tells Elizabeth Banks that he's locked the basement for a surprise for her birthday, and she's like, "My birthday's not for another 2 months or something." It's like, that's close to some people, something like that. And she ends up, I don't know if at this point she ends up getting into the basement before this.
So she calls the doctor and finds out that the doctor has no idea what's going on. He's already lied to her. That makes her suspicious. And she breaks the lockdown. And
you don't see the doctor that she speaks to, by the way, over the phone. But the doctor's voice is the one and only Rob Zombie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just a little thing inserted in there. After she's made up to him that night, or that morning, should I say, Michael Rooker is kind of like starting to get the worst for her, and he wanders into the bathroom where Elizabeth Banks is taking a shower, and he opens his shirt, and all of a sudden we see these worm things, these like 2 worm slug tentacles coming out of his torso. And he kind of has to suppress it, but he knows that it's clear that he needs to get these tentacles into somebody.
Yeah.
So he quickly runs away from his wife, and lo and behold, he goes and knocks for Brenda, who saw him get inserted with the worm in the woods, and he goes into her house, and then obviously she's quick to
welcome him.
Yeah, quick to welcome him. She takes off her shirt, and then all of a sudden he opens up his shirt. The worm slug tentacles come out, and they insert into a terrified Brenda. Yeah, and these effects of these tentacles, I think they're great. I think a lot of the effects in this movie are just really well done.
Yeah, it's obviously a big mix between virtual and special effects.
Yeah, and so when Michael Rooker's character has inserted Brenda, he then goes back home, and he's like, even like the organism inside him is starting to really take hold, and the makeup is amping up and things like this. And then Elizabeth Banks is like, "What the hell is going on?" kind of thing. And at this point, he can't resist anymore. He feels that for some reason that she's betrayed him because she rang the doctor or something like this. So he opens up his shirt again, and he tries to insert Elizabeth Banks with these worm slugs. But out of nowhere comes Nathan Fillion and a couple of other cops with their guns. So Michael Rooker then takes Elizabeth Banks, and one of the first effects we see after these stomach worms are his arm, where he's got it around Elizabeth Banks' neck, and all of a sudden the arm just starts to elongate around her neck. It's
right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that looked pretty cool in itself. But then when he eventually lets go of Elizabeth Banks, his arm is this long floppy thing, and as Michael Rooker's running out of the room, his arm like knocks over a plant and stuff like this. And it's just the way that it's shot and the way that the arm is moving.
So
it's
silly.
really funny.
Yeah. And I also remember, so is it Brenda then, the one who ends up in the massive barn?
Yeah.
That bit's disgusting and hilarious all at once.
Yeah, so Michael Rooker, after inserting Brenda, has taken her out to this barn and has been feeding her loads of meat, as is their wont once they're
like roadkill and stuff.
Roadkill, like possum and things like this. And yeah, so once the town police force are onto the scent of this thing going around killing animals and things like this, because there's a trail of cows in a field. So like the townspeople come out, probably the mayor, that's probably what I'm getting confused with. There's possibly a mayor in Slither who comes out with the police force and all this, and they have a stakeout waiting for Michael Rooker to come out of the woods while he's now completely engulfed by this alien species. And again, the makeup effects are absolutely out of this world for this.
We haven't even gotten to the best bit of it.
No, but when we get into when he's then found coming out of the woods and into the field, they're all kind of like creeping up on him, and they see him just like take this cow out with his like tentacle. It happens pretty quickly, and they all surround him and say, "Look, we're going to get you help." Da 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 da. Obviously, he doesn't quite trust them, and all of a sudden, this have-a-go hero comes out of nowhere, and he's like, "Look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way." To Michael Rooker's alien being, to which he just flicks out a tentacle at him and splits him in half.
So the easy way.
Absolutely the easy way.
Yeah. I'm going to fast forward to my favourite sort of body horror moments, I guess they are, even though somewhat comedic. So, as I mentioned, Brenda in this barn, and again it harks back to all the meat, right? So when you've been infected by this alien presence, from what I gather, it starts to sort of reproduce within you, and you're essentially starving because you're feeding it. You know, it's like having a worm or something eating all your food. And so this character Brenda, by the time the cops come in and break down the barn door or whatever and they find her, she is bloated.
She's a giant balloon in the face.
Size of the barn, and it's just her head, sort of surrounded by fat rings, and then just a bloated sack of flesh, essentially, which then also rips open and releases all these poopy slug-like alien babies.
I thought they were like almost cute little worms almost. So when they split Fat Brenda apart, there's obviously loads of them, and they try to get into the mouths of the police officers and things like this.
Of anyone that's
how they infect you. So obviously the main characters manage to cover their mouths, whereas everyone else ends up being zombified. So there's a whole Night of the Living Dead thing to this, because when they come back to life, there's a whole scene of all the reanimated infected people coming through the countryside, like towards the house, which is directly out of that movie.
And that specifically leads me to the major awesome moment for that, which was, so the original alien, let's call him, has now hunkered down in his house.
Michael Rooker.
And
Grant.
His physical, I guess call it a body, but it's not really a body
He's
as we recognise it anymore. He's just a mass of flesh. And all these other bodies are being like attached and sucked into it. That's why it reminded me a bit of Society.
That is directly out of the inner Society.
And yeah, they just kind of form into one big living thing with like limbs hanging out and heads out and big...
All the bodies that have joined Michael Rooker's fleshy alien being. The main head of Michael Rooker still, he can control all the other bodies that have attached themselves to him, and he can also control all the hordes of people that have been infected by the worms out in the real world as well.
Yeah, you just reminded me, because I think all
they
the
kidnap
aliens
Elizabeth Banks for him at the end.
Share like a conscience, it seems, because
Yeah.
no matter which body it's in, that just reminded me, they all are acting like what's she called again? Is their wife. The main wife.
Elizabeth Banks.
Elizabeth Banks, thank you.
Skylar.
Yeah, Elizabeth Banks. So they're all like, when they've been infected, they're all saying like, talking to her as if they are.
They know her as their husband, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So they seem to just share the one conscience as they spread.
Yeah, and the way that you find out for the first time that they do share a conscience is a scene which is directly, honouring and creating an homage to Nightmare on Elm Street. So when all these worms have escaped and burst out of Brenda, and they start going all over the town, so they're going like all outside people's houses, all over the vans, all this kind of stuff. And there's this girl, she's taking a bath, and you get the classic when Freddy's hand came up through the bathwater at Heather Langenkamp. In this one, you get one of the worms swimming towards the bathing girl, and it manages to get itself into her mouth, but she catches the end of it.
Yeah, she's got long nails.
Yeah, but then we see that the worm is showing her what their world is, and it's just this one giant world eater, essentially, isn't it? It just goes around adding itself to other things, which is what Michael Rooker's alien being parasite thing has been doing on Earth since pretty much the beginning of the movie. And she manages to pull the worm out of her mouth, by the way, and then she singes it with a hair straightener, and the worm... or a curler, all right. And the worm is practical effects, so you actually see the worm like sizzle and bubble and start to melt and stuff. Another really cool effect in this movie. Yeah.
And all of her family gets taken down, by the way, when she escapes. But as you mentioned, when the worm is, or whatever it is in her mouth, and she shares that moment of shared conscience bit, and she finds out a bunch of stuff, that kind of ends up helping the leads take down this alien being.
Yeah. What struck me as odd, though, is when Grant, Michael Rooker, has fully formed into this... It's like almost like a Jabba the Hutt thing, almost, isn't it, in some ways? An alien pussy pink Jabba the Hutt. And Elizabeth Banks, when she's been brought to him by the hordes of infected zombie-like people to Mecha Rooker, she's Mecha Rooker flicks out one of his tentacles and starts playing one of their favourite love songs, and she comes out in like her 90 and confronts this mass pussy being that has become her husband, and she's kind of like not pleading with him, she's saying, oh, we can get you better and I can get used to how you are and we'll be together, blah 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 blah, and she calls him by his name, she calls him Grant, and all of a sudden you see his alien face kind of, it like gurgles because he likes it. She says to him, oh, you like that, I can call you Grant, I can do that for you. And she gets closer and closer to him, she's also so close that she's going to kiss this thing. And then she pulls out a mirror and just stabs, like a handheld mirror, and just stabs this being in, let's say, its neck with just the pointy end of the mirror. And I was like, what is that going to do? Like, you just walked up to this world-eating alien and you think it's a good plan to stick a mirror end into its neck where it just bats you away. And also what I didn't like is that it's not Grant's fault that he's ended up like this. In a way, it's because he went to the woods with Brenda, but he put a stop to it. So he's not like the worst guy in the world. He put a stop to it. So really, he's befallen this terrible fate of being overtaken by this alien parasite, and he clearly still cares for his wife, because when at the end of what I was just speaking, before she stabs him in the neck with a mirror, around her, in the room in the house where Mecha Ruka is, she can see that there's photos of her all over the place, and she goes, "Oh, I love the way that you decorated." So clearly, this alien being is still thinking of his wife, and he hasn't really done anything to her, and she's like tried to kill him. And I was like, that is not cool. That is not cool. He has not done anything to deserve it. He's befallen this tragic fate, as I say, and now he's been betrayed by his wife, and he ends up getting blown to pieces. Like Nathan Fillion obviously comes to the rescue. He gets hit by one of the tentacles, and he takes the tentacle and pops it into like a gas can and stuff, and throws it into the mass body of Mecha Ruka, and then Elizabeth Banks shoots it, and Mecha Ruka blows up, and seemingly ending his existence. And then, of course, Elizabeth Banks' character Skylar is now going to get with Nathan Fillion. So it's all good for her.
Yeah, I think that was...
She just murdered her husband.
Yeah, in fact, I won't even go into it.
If that fate had befallen me, and then I turned into this massive pus thing...
It was pretty gross.
But it was pretty clear that I could still sense you, I still knew you, felt for you, loved you, and missed you, and then you tried to stab me in the neck. I think my soul will be destroyed. So I felt for Grant. Alien Grant. Yeah, sympathise with his character. So pretty cool movie.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it.
Really enjoyable. It didn't make its budget back in the cinema or anything like that, which is a shame. I guess it's a kind of a cult movie, but if you're in the horror society, let's say, then it's well known.
Yeah, it's not something I heard of when I was growing up, to be fair. So. And
I'd like to see James Gunn maybe go back into horror for a bit, rather than doing all these run-of-the-mill superhero movies and stuff, which
I definitely think he has something great as a director. We
also watched this this reality TV show from I believe 2008. It's called Scream Queens, and these like 10 girls, these
reality show.
Yeah, these actress hopefuls go into like a Big Brother style house, and they have to fight for a life-changing role in Scream 6.
Yeah, it's the same format as every other one.
And James Gunn
Top Model or whatever. It just with acting challenges.
And James Gunn is one of the judges in it and stuff like that. Yeah, so. And
I really enjoyed watching his directing style in that. It seems very hands-on in the actual performance, which not that many directors do. Yeah,
and Michael Rooker also shows up in one of the episodes as well.
Right. Yeah.
And if you're used to, he's somewhat typecast, Michael Rooker normally is like a badass kind of guy. So when you see him in real life, which I hadn't done before, you see actually how good an actor he is, because he's a really jolly fellow, isn't he, when he comes into this. So yeah, definitely worth checking out Scream Queens. It is, I mean, it's pure trash reality TV.
Yeah, it's of its time, and just, I very much enjoyed it.
So let's get on to number 1, Prom Night, the original, starring uber scream queen Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah, and this one was kind of the opposite for me going into it compared to Thanksgiving, where Thanksgiving I was quite hopeful that it would be great, whereas Prom Night, as much as it's very, well known in the horror genre, I've actually heard a lot of negative things about it. Actually, even from you, because you had seen it once before, hadn't you?
Yeah, I'd only seen it the once before, and this was when I was consuming
left, right, and centre
at a rapid rate.
Stuff.
Yeah, when I was growing up.
So on first watch, you didn't love it.
Compared to all the other things that I was watching at the time, I wasn't loving Prom Night. I didn't hate it or anything, but I hadn't revisited it since. But after we'd watched Prom Night 3, which we reviewed on a previous episode of this, I thought I'd definitely give it a go again.
Yeah, plus it's one of those, whether it's good or not, I feel like you should watch if you're in this genre.
That's exactly why I watched it when I was a teen.
Yeah. And I thought it was pretty good. It was actually pretty good. And also bearing in mind, because we've seen a sort of like a remake of it, which is just... I was sat there like, what? Why is this happening? What's the story here? Because it didn't really give any reason. Whereas this one, at least, I liked that it gave you a proper backstory and...
It opens with that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
With the kids.
Mm-hmm. So, I'm assuming most of our watchers will have seen this, but just in case, quick run through. It opens with 3 siblings going home from school or something, and they come across a group of other children, and one of these young twins, the girl, she wants to play with this group of kids in this house, so she goes and tries to partake in their game, and they end up scaring her through a second floor window, I believe, and she
The killer's
falls
coming,
out.
the killer's coming.
Kill, kill, kill. And she falls out of this window and dies.
Yeah. And then the kids, who are only 10 years old, they all make a pact, a la I Know What You Did Last Summer, saying no one says a word about this.
Yeah.
And they all stick to it, and then we fast forward 6 years into the future,
Yeah.
where they've grown to be 16.
This movie could have been so different if those kids had just been like, well, we're super young and no one touched her, maybe we should just go to the police and say what happened. But no, that's not what happens. So yeah, we fast forward to when the eldest sibling, who is played then by Jamie Lee Curtis, is attending her prom.
Yeah, or the build up to attending her prom. So these characters who have not forced the child out the window, but caused her to fall out the window and die. They start getting the classic ominous phone calls from some stranger, and they'll be like, "I'll see you at prom, Kelly. It's been a long time." And it just reminded me, it's clearly Kevin Williamson watched Prom Night. I know I've read this before, but it's so clear how clear Prom Night was in Kevin Williamson's mind when he wrote Scream.
Yeah.
Directly taken from this, and also Black Christmas, which started the whole telephone thing possibly, but that was just a nice thing to see that is carried on through the years in the slasher genre.
And also, actually, it was really shocking to me that I won't reveal, too much yet, but I can say that who ended up being the killer, even though it seemed super obvious, actually wasn't in my mind. So they managed to keep that suspense for me and keep the reveal interesting.
Yeah, again, we've taken quite different things away from this movie. I won't quite go there yet, but we also have, as well as I just mentioned, the whole Scream thing. There's a very Halloween type relationship in this movie where you have a character called Dr. Fairchild and a character called Lieutenant McBride, and they're investigating the prom night killer coming back, and he's just committed his first murder, so they're talking about it in the police office. And Dr. Fairchild says something like, "I haven't seen Leonard since he was disfigured and institutionalized." And they start talking different ways about how they're going to catch the killer, or if he even is around. So it's questions up in the air, and also the phone rings, and Lieutenant McBride picks it up, and he's like, okay. Puts the phone down, looks up at Dr. Fairchild, and goes, "He's back." And that's how you know it's all going to start to escalate. And then another phone call comes in to Wendy, who's she's like the evil girl. She's like the mean girl in the group.
Right, okay.
And she gets a phone call, and it's like, "Wendy, do you still like to play games?"
Yeah.
And I love those little touches. With some great characters in this, so Wendy, actually no, not Wendy. There's one of the girls in the group.
Yeah.
She's walking down the street one day, and all of a sudden this guy in a van, like a Scooby-Doo style van, pulls up, and he's like, "Hey, beautiful, need a lift? My name is Seymour Crane, but they call me Slick."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and also that part of this movie makes me wonder if that's the reason why men think that shouting out the window at girls is gonna get them anywhere, because she ends up getting with him.
It's all Slick's fault. That's why they call him Slick.
Darn you, Slick.
Yeah, she's like, "Do you always pull up and talk to girls at the side of the street?" And he says something along the lines of,
Only the attractive ones.
"If they're good looking,
Yeah.
I give them a ride." And then she gets in his van, and she's like, "I'm only being taken to school." He's like, "You got it. We're just going to school." But then later on, Slick gets his way.
They have a good time.
Slick has a real nice time.
They smoke some weed.
They pay
have
for it,
some
though.
sexy time, and then they get killed.
Yeah.
See, you can't have sex or do drugs in a horror movie and expect to live.
We also have a character called Lou, who in the context of the school hierarchy, he's like the bad boy. He smokes, and he's supposed to be 16, but he looks at least 40, and it looks like he could work as a henchman for the New Jersey mob rather than being a student.
I didn't fully understand who his character was supposed to be. I felt like it was a bit mishy-mashy.
He's Lou the student.
I know, but like at one point he was like the bad guy, another point he was just an idiot. The other, I was like, is this like who is this guy? It wasn't very clear.
Now, obviously, this movie is called Prom Night. So before we get to the prom night, Jamie Lee Curtis, she's not in the running for like prom queen. She's just it's like for dance queen or something like this. So Jamie Lee Curtis is going to be in a dance competition at the prom night.
Oh, I thought she was practicing because she knew she was prom queen and that was their like first, they dance after they've been announced.
Possibly,
or something.
But for any reasons to watch this movie, there's a few. But Jamie Lee Curtis walks onto the dance floor. It's empty because school's ended or whatever. It's like nighttime shot, and she starts practicing her moves on an empty dance floor. And as she spins, she sees her, what I believe was, I might be wrong, her prom dance competition. It's probably not because Wendy doesn't dance in the end. But yeah, she sees Wendy lurking in the shadows, and she's been watching the whole time. And as Jamie Lee Curtis realises that Wendy's standing there and they catch each other's eye, Wendy gives a classic
slow clap
and a something like a bravo. And she's oh, so are you practicing for tonight? Don't forget, after tonight, it all goes back to normal. My boyfriend Nick may be prom king and you're queen, but that's where it ends. And then Jamie Lee Curtis says something like, maybe you should tell him that. And Wendy ends it with, it's not who you go with, honey. It's who takes you home. Just you wait and see. So right there, the disco gauntlet has been laid down in no uncertain terms.
And you've also literally just cleared up the point. So yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis is prom queen. That girl you're talking about, her
boyfriend is
ex-boyfriend. So
yeah.
He thinks they're broken up, but she won't accept that they're broken up. And he actually wants to be with Jamie Lee, and he's prom king. So they're gonna like have a dance together and stuff, and that's yeah.
All the girls are on the tennis court in one scene as well, and one of the girls, Vicky, who I said she looks like almost Scandinavian.
Oh, I think she was supposed to be like Russian or something. She's like some rich guy's daughter, and she gets whisked away early on.
But Vicky comes off the tennis court, and she sees the janitor, Mr. Sykes,
Yeah.
and she goes, "Hey, Mr. Sykes," and she turns around, she flashes him her bum, lovely bum, but then the camera zooms in on Mr. Sykes, and he's got his tongue poking out. It's like,
Well, again, he's thrown in there as someone suspicious, supposedly. Not that I ever thought he was actually a potential killer, but yeah. Such a random character to have.
We move, so you have to remind me again, why is Jamie Lee Curtis dancing a solo, or with her boyfriend, or Wendy's boyfriend, should I say?
So, I'm pretty sure the way it
just
works
they're
in
prom
America,
king and prom
if you're
queen,
prom
right?
king and queen, you like start off the dancing or something.
Right.
You have a dance.
So we get to the prom, and as you just mentioned there, Jamie Lee Curtis, being prom queen, has to start the dancing, and what we get is Jamie Lee Curtis thrusting, shimmying, bumping butts, twirling, kicking, hopping, hanging upside down, mirror dancing, and generally just cutting loose. And there's this heavy disco track in the background, and just pumping up, prom night,
Oh, dear.
everything is alright. Jamie Lee Curtis just cutting loose to this. And then this dance lasts for about 3.5-4 minutes of just Jamie Lee Curtis and the prom queen dancing, and of course the school, they all go nuts for it.
I have to say, she is very elegant mover.
Yeah.
The choreography was laughable for now.
As well as Jamie Lee Curtis dancing with the prom king, I believe Leslie Nielsen is her dad in this movie, and we get to see Leslie Nielsen and Jamie Lee Curtis dancing together on a school prom dance floor. Leslie Nielsen's obviously he's the guy from Naked Gun. Those movies that you love. Your favourite. So there are reasonably tame kills in this. It's not like all blood and guts and things like this.
It's not like Thanksgiving.
But some of the killings are quite bizarre. So we'll go back to the character Slick, and he's got his prey in the back of his van, which is turned into a just total shag pad. It's just a bed. It's a bed on wheels essentially.
For that special day.
Yeah, and previous to going back into the van and smoking weed, they've been out doing the gnarly. So the killer's not too happy about that. So when they're in the van, the killer opens the back of the van, and Slick's date gets offed. But the killer's like jumping up and down, just growling, now.
Oh, yeah.
And you really reacted to that. You were like, what the hell did I just see?
That was so weird. Yeah. It went to like suddenly some sort of weird comedic moment, but for like a split second, which the rest of it didn't feel like it was.
Yeah, there are quite a few other... It ends quite comedically as well for me. So, as I mentioned, the lieutenant and the doctor... Later on in the movie, the lieutenant, for some reason, is at the prom. And the doctor comes in and says to him, hey, we got the killer. They obviously haven't. And they said, State Patrol must have got him 50 miles away. And then the lieutenant just responds with, now I can finally start enjoying the prom. I was like, so all this time the lieutenant was just like, come on, doctor, get back so I can finally start getting down at the prom. To end it all, Lou, bad boy Lou, the smoker, the henchman, should be henchman anyway, his head appears on the runway of the prom get-up that they've made.
Without the rest of the body.
Without the rest of the body, yeah. Decapitated. And then everyone kind of evacuates the dance floor, evacuates the school, but obviously Jamie Lee Curtis and I believe her date are left behind, and the killer is attacking them with his axe on the dance floor.
He's attacking the date specifically.
Yeah,
I should point out.
Still pretty much an attack on both of them, though, isn't it?
Well, I think it's.
I know what you mean, but either way, the killer's out on the dance floor with Jamie Lee Curtis and the date, and once again, this is all playing to the backdrop of Prom Night. Everything is alright. I'm just like, what is going on here? We got a guy in a balaclava and a black suit, dressed like a robber with an axe, trying to like decapitate someone, and just this funky disco music is carrying on in the background. That was the reason when I was younger and I watched this.
Well, you didn't like.
Yeah, I wanted like a more serious tone on most of the things that I was watching, but as an older now and appreciating all these stupid little things about the movie.
I mean, how can
you not enjoy Jamie Lee Curtis disco dancing and, all this other kind of silly things of it? Slick was great, Lou was great, Wendy, Vicky, the whole shebang.
It was funny in parts, actually, yeah. And
it was tonally stupid.
Jamie, of course, is Scream Queen. She ends up being the one to fight off the killer with his own weapon, I believe, or she hits him in the head, right? And then she realises too late who he is. And I can't believe you think this ends funny. I think it's quite sad, really. So
it does end sad, but you have to understand we've just come off the dance floor with the killers. To Prom Night, everything is all right. Don't be uptight.
Yeah, but then you realise. I mean, I'm gonna give up not trying to give away spoilers because that's pretty much all we do on this talk show. But the sibling that was killed, the little twin girl, it's her twin brother who ends up being the killer, and that's Jamie Lee Curtis's younger brother. So this family, Jamie Lee Curtis and her parents, have not only now lost the twin sister, but she's killed her own brother, who went on some mental rampage against his sister's killers. I mean, how tragic is that?
Prom night, everything is alright. As well as that great tune, we also get one other, which doesn't play for long, and it sounds like, a pub-level Tom Jones. Worth seeing.
Yeah.
All three of these movies.
All three recommend.
Definitely. And like you said, they could be in completely different orders of 1 to 3. Just depending on how you feel.
What mood you're in.
This is possibly, you mentioned earlier on, this is possibly the first one where we like all 3, right?
Yes. I think it's the first one where I'd say all 3 of them were good quality.
Yeah. And the next episode is going to be... The movie's going to be quite different.
It's going to be fun.
It's going to be real fun, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see you next week.
Until then.